And what's really good to have here is we can put all of this into a single compound, say terrain compound, and then we can just hook up everything around it. So first off, let's just get rid of some of the things we're not going to use. We're going to use all of that. We're going to leave this on the outside. This is our water plane. Let's name it accordingly. And we'll put this one on the outside as well. Call this our land plane. Now, to make a compound, all I'm going to do is select everything here except the output and anything I want and my two inputs. Control G for group. And this has made a brand new compound. If I press F, it'll focus on that compound. If I press A, it'll show all of those. And if I press L, it'll automatically lay out for you. So some of these we don't need. That one we do. That one we don't. That one we do. So this is the cleanup you do after you set up a compound. This is our lake. This is our terrain. This is not needed. This is not needed. So there is our inputs, our water plane. And of course I could absolutely just take this guy and drop him in there. Don't have the pretty colors and stuff, but the plane is still there. You can see the low res plane there. But that's all right. So we'll call this water and we'll call this land. And name our terrain compound. Now there are some things we might want to change outside the compound. So we need to make some more inputs. And one of the biggest things we need to make for an input are the seeds and this scalar field. So to make an input into a compound that you're inside, and you can see up here, there's our graph shape, and this is the compound that we're in. We need to make an input. And we need to put these into the input. Now, I like to name things as I go. So mountain seed, lake seed, so I can change them independently. And this is water to land ratio. Good enough name. Just looking at this, is there anything else that I want to add into here? I think those, you could output the colors. So let's do that. You can have multiple inputs, which is leading up to the next thing we'll talk about. Just a minute. So here's another input. I have this, let's call this watercolor. That's the color of the water. If you look at the outside now, if you go back out here, you can see that they've all turned up. And I've just got my watercolor there. Go back in. And I can put these out as well. So land color low and land color high. And again, they turn up out here, which is brilliant. And that also means that I can come back out here. I can say, I'd like some more blue in my land or more green in my land. And I can just change these and they change accordingly. So if I want to make the whole thing a bit darker, I can left click on the title and just drag it down. You can see how it's getting darker under there, which is great. Same with the uplands. And the other thing looking at this I think we might need to have on this compound is the adjustment of the fraction that you're going between. So we'll pop that out there as well. And we'll just say land color curve. Cool, that'll do for now. That's got us started. What you're left with is a compound with controls that then affect what you're doing. That right now, that's pretty much the end of lesson 1. Here's some terrain, here's some way to control it. This is how fields work. Awesome, great. Moving just a little bit onto there before I let you go, get about your day. I want to talk about editing the UI on compounds you've made. Because you can, obviously you can right click and change names quite happily. There it is to change name there. There's the change name there. I'll change it back. So rename. And here's one of the new things you can do also is you can put them into groups. You can make a new group. So let's call this seeds. And I can then right click on here and go seeds as well. And that's now an import group. And you can close that up to make your compounds less huge. That's the manual way to do it. You can also do it here. So this is the little pencil icon. You can see that I've got little kebab menus next to these guys, which means I can just click there and I can drag and it's going to reorder my options. So high, low, and watercolor. Let's just change that order there. Water land ratio is fine. I might want to put the color curve above the colors. Great. It's all good. And here's the next good thing. This is where you can set your minimum and maximum values if you want to, but also you can change this to be a color picker. And what this gives you is this little swatch of color here. I'm going to do it to that one, and that one, and that one. Once you've finished your editing and you're happy, you can either close it here or just close this down. You're no longer customizing the UI. And, oh, sorry, my bad. I need to make a new group like this. Get back into my customize UI. And I can just drag these guys into the group like this. You can see that they're being added to the group here. I can close it down. Then I can close up that group, close up that group. I can go back into my editing. I can move this whole group down so it sits there like this. And you can see that the groups are now at the bottom and they're closed. You can do all kinds of editing on your UI here, which is super handy and super useful for when you're trying to set up tools and things like that. All of these, of course, work. So if I take my color curve and say I want to go insane in the middle and dark at the bottom, I can do that too. And that all works quite happily. Move this along so we get a little bit darker. Give it a bit more of it, a bit more of that. All those fun adjustments you want to do. So yeah, that's the basics of UI editing. There's not much more to it than that. There are some other widgets you don't know about yet. Actually, no, there's not. You can change a port type up here. Usually it's a virtual slider or a combo box. Combo box is the one you don't know about yet. Basically, that allows you to make a menu. So you could have like seed is a bad one to do it on, but you could make a menu to say curve 1, curve 2, curve 3, curve 4, like we did before. You could set all that up to work. It involves a bit of logic inside, which we won't be going into in lesson 1. It's probably a little bit too diving in with both feet deep in stuff. But this is going to get you through making your own compound, setting up port groups on that compound, and doing things like color pickers. And also, don't forget, you can limit. You can say, okay, I don't want a seed lower than 0 and above 32. You can see that this has changed when you do that. And no matter how much you scroll, it's not going to go below 0 and it's not going to go above 32. So that gives you the minimum maximum. I'm just going to undo that for now. So yeah, that's UI editing. Okay, and just to send you all on your way, here is a little more advanced stuff. First thing that's bothering me is the water is completely opaque. So let's have a look at how to get transparency into the viewport. There's a couple of nodes you're going to need to use, and we're going to talk about assigning materials. So I'm going to jump into my terrain. Actually, let's be careful. This is another good thing I can do is I can take this guy, I can copy and paste him. It's going to paste everything inside of it as is, where is, and then just hook this app to the output. And what this lets me have is a backup. So if I completely break this compound, I can just go back to this one. I hope I don't completely break it, but let's go. So I want to get this water to be a little transparent. How do you get transparency in the viewport in Bifrost? Well, let's go find our water shader. And this is our water shader here with its if statement on it, so I can turn it off, which I probably should have piped out as a compound, but you feel free to do that. What's happening at the moment is it's taking geometry in and applying a color at full emission to that. So there is a shader in here, and that shader here is standard surface material. And that's applying a fully emissive shader. So there's no shadows, there's nothing, it's all just color. This way you can't see the normals, you can't cast any shadows, you can't do anything like that. So we're going to use a different kind of shader to do this. This is not a bad way to do it, but the way to get a shader onto, I'll just take that if statement out for now, pop that in there. The way to get a material, a shader, onto a Bifrost object is assign material. You can see here, this is your geometry input, so this is where this guy comes in. Surface material, displacement material, volume material. This is a lot tied in with rendering, especially rendering in Arnold, but we're not going to use it for rendering just yet. So I don't need displacement and I don't need volume. I just need surface. So if I plug this in now, see it's gone gray. In fact, I want to take out this guy here. Now I could just put a standard surface material like this. I could put this one into my base color like that. And if I plug that into here, you can see the base colors changing things as well. And then I can start messing with transmission to get transparency, but there's an even easier way. I'm just going to delete that. There's a different kind of material called constant surface material, which does a lot of what this does in that the color is always the color, but it gives you transparency. So if I pop color in here, surface material, that's cool. It's gone back to the color that we chose out here. There's our color, but it's now got a transparency slider, and I can do things like this. So that I've now got semi-transparent water. And of course, because this is all about that, let's pop that out here. So into this input, we can even just call this color input. Just so that when you come back inside this compound, you know what's going on. It's turned up here. I can go to my editing. You see that it's come through as a color picker already because it's a color picker on the material. I want that in the color group. And I'm quite happy for it to sit there. We're good. Color. There you go. So there's just a quick way of getting that. Next thing I really would like to do is I'm using two colors. I'm using two colors and I'm interpolating between two colors. What if I wanted to use 4? Now, you know, there's plenty of mathematical ways to go in to this loop here, which is what's controlling our colors. I could loop that again and again and again and again and chain it, or I could use a Rebel Pack node. Now you remember back at the beginning of the video we talked about downloading the Rebel Pack. This is where you use it. The node is called get from interpolated array, and you can tell it's a Rebel Pack node because its icon is a little R for rebels. And what this does is something a little different. This allows you to put an array of things in here and then interpolate that array by this float index and some controls in here. So what that means in practice is that this is my array index. So this is what I'm using as a fraction for my loop. Now what I need to do is get some colors going on. So let's make some. So that's colors are quite simply a value node that's set to vector. Maybe not vector 4. My bad there, vector 3. So instead of X, Y, and Z, this is red, green, and blue. So let's talk about what color we want the bottom of our lakes. And I'm sort of thinking sort of some kind of dark brown, like this. And if you wanted to just preview this as you're going, you can plug that in, see what you get. It's probably not dark brown enough. Bring that all the way right down. So the color you're going to get is here. It can come down even further. Something like that. It's a good first color. So that's great. There's our first color. Copy and paste it. And so we want to sort of get to some sort of color at the shoreline here maybe, or just graduating up into we do still want to keep the greens, but we want to graduate through them in more than two ways. So all I'm going to do here, I'm going to make this almost a bright. And again, we can test it just by plugging it in there. What I really want to do is make that a kind of something yellowy, sandish, sort of that kind of color. I mean, obviously you'd pick your own colors, and this is just for viewport display as well, so don't worry too much. So there's that second one. I quite like this green, so I'm going to put the low color. I'm just going to disconnect that for now. Do a pass node. Plug it in here so we keep our loop colors, but I can also use this as well, and I'm going to do the same thing with my high green color. Pass node. There, this does have a purpose, bear with me. I know it gets a little confusing, but we'll include the files with this. And then last of all, I want a white. So, you know, top of hills, let's have some snow, and white's easy, it's just all ones. So now I've got my 5 colors that start here, go to here, go to here, go to here, and go to there. What I want to do is build an array. So I'm building a color array. And I want to do that in order, so from the bottom to the top. Those two, and then I want my low land color, which I can pull out of this pass here. And my high land color, which I can pull out of my pass here. And then my white at the end. So what I can do now is plug that into the array port of the interpolated array, put that into my emission color. Doesn't look like much has changed right now, it's just kind of gone yellowy brown, and that's because we need to turn on normalized index to start with. And you can see this is working now. Dark brown shading up to yellow, shading up to, there's something wrong here. And that's easy. That now all we need to do is play with this F curve here, which we've got output. First thing I'm going to do is just take that back to default, and that's already looking pretty good. There's a very sharp distinction here, and you guys can kind of get what I'm going for here. And of course you can change it. You can have more of the darks, or what I want in this case is not quite so much, but a bit more of the lights. That way, like that, and I possibly want to get more greens. Not looking terribly pretty right now, but I'm sure you get the idea. And now we can make the lakes a bit less transparent. So we've got the blues. We can again work with the curve just a little bit. So if we bring this up, we're just getting more greens where we want them. And then, of course, it's lightening everything up as well, but you get the idea. So that's just an example of an add-on pack for Bifrost. The other thing you can do, really, really quickly, is you can make controls to switch between the two of these, which is our logic. So we've done if. You can say, if it's false, we just want the old coloring. If it's true, we want the new coloring. Plug that in there. And then you can run this out to an input. Give it a name. Color system will do. And then we come out here, select our compound and say, I want to change my color system. So yeah. And that's pretty much it for lesson 1. One thing I need to mention before we go is there is a window I did not show you, and I left it to the very end on purpose. And I left it to the very end on purpose, is the Bifrost Browser. And this, let me just save this guy. We'll call this lesson 1. The Bifrost Browser is a whole bunch of example files that you can load, see how they work, read the instructions on the inside and on the info tab. By the way, every node that you use, let's use a plane node. There's a create mesh plane, has help on it. If it's not showing up for you, you can find it under Windows, and it's the information panel. So obviously, if you've made your own compound, there's no information. You haven't made an info panel. But if you're using one of Bifrost compound, that can go away. Using one of Bifrost's compounds like this one, and you get quite good, well laid out help on what everything does when it has it. Values don't, they're pretty self-explanatory, but change range does, array bounds does, get point position does, displace points does, tells you what everything does. So this is a really handy thing to keep in mind, is that if you're not quite sure what a node's doing, or you're getting weird results, go read this, see if there's anything in there. And if I save that and make a new file, you can import things from the browser and take a look at how they're made. So if we just say take a quick one, gradient advection perhaps, import that. I'm just going to close down the Maya here. I'm not seeing anything at the moment because there is nothing to see just yet. But if I click off, if I make sure nothing is selected in the graph that it's loaded and go to the Info tab, there's also help for the Bifrost browser stuff in here. What it does, how it works, settings, etc., etc. And also, if I play that, then it shows you the effect. Go new again, and just do one more. Bifrost browser. What's it? Geometry queries. Snow shadows. Import. Minimize that window. Again, with nothing selected, puts gloopy melting snow on top of surfaces, but not under them, leaving a snow shadow. You've got your help there, shows how things does. You can come in here and play with the settings to see what they do. You can see that the direction of the snow shadow is changing. So yeah, good thing to know, good thing to play with, good thing to learn from. And there are quite a few of them. You can take a look at some of the Rebel Pack stuff, the Scatter Pack, Fire Fields, Particle Strands, Volumes, Cloth, Sand, Snow. And you probably won't have that one. I only have it because I have Maxime's compounds loaded, which I would recommend that you load, but we'll get to that in a later lesson. All right, cool. Thank you very much for listening. Hope it's been a help, and I'll catch you next time.